Hey YouTube, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about the results for BCS Houston. This is the first event in 3 years for the Bushiroad Championship Series, so I'm really excited to cover this. If you guys need any coaching for BCS season, my link for Metafy is in the bottom right hand corner, metafy.gg/@Derek-Dow. A lot of the slots are being filled up right now because a lot of people have been booking for the BCS training, so feel free to book a session ASAP if you ever want it. So BCS Houston, the first big event to qualify for Worlds after 3 years, and it's amazing to be back. Thank you again to Fuzzy Paradox for all of the graphics that we're going to show. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. His details will be in the description below. So starting off with BCS Houston in Standard. So I think the first day was Standard and Premium, and then the second day was V Premium and Weiss. So BCS Houston, pretty diverse, if I gotta say. 2 Gravidias and then 1-ofs in Flagberg, Overlord, MLB, which is really interesting, Kari Bavsagra and Nirvana. So I don't think we've seen a lot of MLB, if any, in the past seasons, which is really interesting. So seeing MLB kind of pop up for the first time ever, actually, is very cool. And I think we could probably say the same for Overlord, especially since Overlord doesn't have like their PR yet. So seeing these two make an appearance for top 8 in Houston is awesome. So jumping to the top 4, so Ronald Manzano came first place, winning his sponsored invitation to Worlds in Los Angeles with Nirvana. Second place was Justin Rawls with Flagberg. Third is Johnny Johnson with Gravidia, and fourth was Alex Chavez with Kyrie. So as expected, to be honest, I think Nirvana has a really good conversion rate, especially if it hits top 8. At least that's what I found. So a lot of Nirvanas who make it to top 8 tend to do really well. Most of them even come first. Kind of a trend that we saw at Springfest, and maybe not BRO, but definitely Springfest. We see a lot of teams taking Nirvana and then just doing well and essentially winning it all. So very cool. Congratulations to 3 of the 4 people here netting themselves a world invite. So we're just going to go through some of the deck lists for these players. So the first one was the Nirvana that came first. Pretty interesting list, playing the 2 Urges and the 1 Valiente. I haven't actually seen this card since heck knows whenever. This card like came out in set 1 and then immediately got overtaken by Expector when it came out. So pretty interesting to play that, and only playing 3 Retsuji and 2 Amelias, so which is super interesting. I think a lot of people really underplay this card. This card is actually really good. Playing 4-ofs just to see it, being able to go to grade 4 regardless if you're going first or second before your opponent is actually really impactful. And then playing the split of heals, so the 2 crit heals and the 2 normal heals is pretty interesting too. I think a lot of people are expecting a lot of, you know, Gravidias, Baramagnus, anything that naturally gets crit. So I think the heals really play a big part in the way that people construct their decks. So yeah, congratulations to this Nirvana player coming first place with that spicy sponsored invitation to Worlds. Second place is this Flagberg list. So a lot of people are looking at Flagberg and playing the order line, so the Zorga line, which is, I guess, a different concept to the deck. This one just straight up plays the Flagberg ride line. The one thing that kind of strikes out to me is like the Ascendance Assault and only playing 3 copies. I guess then like the Spiritual Body Condensation kind of runs as like a 4th, 5th, and 6th copy of Ascendance Assault. And then obviously, you know, you still play the Blooming Petal grade 2 for soul issues, because this deck does use a lot of soul in like your inlets and other cards. And then playing this 1 Kuchi, making a 15k booster behind a Flagberg. I mean, Flagberg itself I think is already quite hard to guard, but I think this pushes the boundaries a little bit, because like on a Persona ride, this is like what, 23, 33 plus 15 is like 48. So even ditching like 3 15ks is like pretty hard to guard a Flagberg, because it only, I think, guards for like 1 to break or something like that. So I think the Kuchi here really pushes that over the line in terms of the guarding. Otherwise, you know, opting to play the restand heal, I think I do respect it. I think this deck does kind of hurt itself a lot if it doesn't play any defenses against decks like Bastion. Bastion, especially if they go first, rolls this deck or like puts a lot of pressure on this deck. So I think playing the 2/2 split heal is like pretty formidable. But otherwise, everything else is like, you know, your traditional Flagberg list. Yeah, congratulations. I think a lot of Flagberg players are very happy to see this, you know, come up. I would like to see a little bit more Zorga, but I guess, you know, Flagberg, you know, a lot of people are saying, you know, Flagberg's not getting enough respect, and Flagberg's, you know, doing things is the best OKR deck, and, you know, it's just proven itself time and time again. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Second place, Flagberg. Third place was Gravidia, and this is pure Gravidia. Playing the one of Bulldoze, playing as like a 23k beater, having like a 10k booster, which is pretty interesting. Playing Gravidia Peters as like a on hit. Yeah, I'm not sure, and only 6 meteors. I think that's a pretty low count for like a pure build. Playing the one Shoga, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that, because I think the sweet spot is like 7 to 8, maybe even 9. But I think 9's too much. I think like the sweet spot's like 7 or 8 for pure Gravidia. At least that's what I'd run. But otherwise, like pretty interesting choices in the fact that you are running like grade 2 boosters, but as well running Gravidia Peters at the same time. Like, yeah, pretty interesting. Like not capitalizing very much on like the attackers, but more so the boosters, because I mean we only see like 2 Stanner here, obviously the 1 Ride Line Buringer, but maybe just having the Baku Burrito in the front row and then, you know, Stanners is just enough, and then I guess you can just kind of push this in front, which becomes a 20k on Persona Ride is like formidable enough. So yeah, pretty interesting list. Definitely not the way I would build, you know, Gravidia, pure Gravidia, but I mean it's doing well, so very cool. And playing the crit heal as well. Cool. So that was Gravidia. We don't have the Kyrie list, unfortunately, but we do have some of the top 8 lists, and this is the MLB list. Playing 4 Marin, and playing a 3/3 pair of Betavi and K, and playing 2 of this Sterilized Angel, which gives itself 5k. I think what this deck is trying to do is to rush early with like numbers. So like if you have this and like Marin, then it becomes like what, 25 on grade 2, which is like pretty hard to guard, even if you get a damage trigger. And then you play Fort as well. Fort is just, you know, your 8k, but giving the 5k to your Vanguard makes the Vanguard middle column a little bit more harder to guard, or a little bit more annoying to guard, which was obviously not the case before if you didn't play Fort, because this thing would just swing for like, what, 13, 15 with like triple driving crit, not a threat at all. So yeah, I guess that makes it so that this becomes a bit more threatening, and then obviously comboing with like the Sterilized Angel so that, you know, your sides are big as well. So yeah, pretty interesting list. Very rush centric from the get-go, you know, dropping down a bunch of Marins and then pushing the Marins back, putting stuff in the front. Kind of makes sense, and I gotta respect it, you know. I think it's very similar, the concept is very similar to the Dragon Empire deck, I think that Kai covered on the WCC channel for, I think it was Mexico, for Springfest, where, you know, the whole point of the deck is to make numbers, and I think the concept here is very similar. Just making numbers early game, making sure you're hitting magic numbers, and then, yeah, you just naturally win, right? Because, you know, if you verse decks like Bruce, Bastion, anything that is like turn 4 Lorana roll, and then sometimes you don't even get advantage for like some of these decks even until you get to like, you know, turn 3, turn 4. So, you know, if you capitalize early, you might just win out of the gate like that and putting pressure from the get-go. So yeah, very interesting MLB list. And then next is this Overlord list. Overlord, I think it's pretty good, even without the PR. I think there was a build that I was thinking about couple months ago or a couple weeks ago, which ran like this grade 1 that became like an 11k, which is pretty interesting. But otherwise, like I've been like versing this deck at locals, and it's pretty strong. Very tanky, obviously, with the Madoka, and then, you know, getting big with like your Fauna Harlems, and obviously you have your Burning Horns. Otherwise, you know, this grade 2, you know, boosts any of the units to make magic numbers. But I guess the only thing with this deck is that it doesn't run boosters, so you're just playing front row, which may or may not be something a little bit, you know, odd. But otherwise, you know, still playing the 4 of heals, no crit heals, no restand heals. Pretty interesting. So yeah, Dote coming top 8, and then the last one is Bavsagra. So I actually respect Bavsagra a lot, especially if you're a Chad and you end up drawing all 3 of your Trick Moons early. You just slam and jam them. This deck is actually pretty strong. And I think a lot of people, when they verse Bavsagra, they forget actually how strong this deck is. Interesting enough, only playing 3 Oshina. Yeah, so pretty interesting there. But otherwise, everything else is like pretty cool. I did see a list a while back that ran the Eugene order to mass retire and then draw a bunch. That was a pretty interesting list. Once you've set up your arms, you don't really need to use the arms anymore. So then you still have to use your Eugene order to like draw a bunch, because you like mass retire their field with like the likes of Travis, obviously Bavsagra to wipe the front row. Yeah, pretty interesting list. But yeah, you know, this is your stock standard Bavsagra list. Pretty cool. So yeah, moving on to V Premium. V Premium was actually on day 2, but we're just gonna, you know, separate it: D, V, and then Premium. Premium at the end. A lot to talk about for Premium. But anyways, V Premium, 2 golds, 2 Grand Blue, 1 Bermuda, 1 Shadow, 1 Genesis, and 1 Link Joker. As meta as it gets. Like, this is pretty much coming off BRO. This is like the type of stuff that we want to see, we expect to see coming off BRO as well. Obviously, you know, you're playing decks that are faster than Gurgit, because Gurgit is the deck to beat. So yeah, very interesting. Nothing really odd other than maybe the Chaos, but we don't actually have the Chaos list, unfortunately. But anyways, going into top 4, we have Deshaun McNeil coming first place, a sponsored invitation to Worlds, playing Gurgit. Second place was Andrew Williams playing Night Rose. Third was Hank Huang playing Night Rose as well. And then Mark Doe, 4th place with Ange Highlander. Jumping into the list, so Gurgit. This is a Gurgit deck that runs Edmund. So, you know, opting to run more defensive options than to run Max Slash and Sagramore. I think a lot of decks run Sagramore just to loop attacks, but I guess the deck becomes a little bit more fragile when you're running multiple grade 3s. And then I guess now that you're opting to run stuff like Eleanor, the power on your rear guards become a little bit more relevant rather than having like a bunch of 3s in your hand. But pretty interesting playing the Chorus as well, mass intercepting all at once. You know, gets rid of anything that, you know, has a bunch of excels, and then anything like Melody where it has, you know, big rear guards. This checks it essentially. But other than that, pretty interesting list. Not running Sagramores and very little Max Slash. I guess just stabilizing. I'm not too sure whether I like this list or not. And then playing, you know, Rainbow triggers, pretty interesting as well. But 5 fronts, pretty cool, and then like 3 draws. Yeah, quite an interesting list, a little mix of everything, and, you know, gotta put respect on that. Pretty cool. And then this is the Ange Highlander list. This is very similar, or if not the same as Man Long's list. Very simple, you know, you draw your Kutia, you know, grab your Sednas, filter out your deck, get your top idle Aquas, bounce your Kutia searches everything, and then you just pretty much thin your deck out, compress your deck, call your Tira restands, you know, twice, dump a bunch of triggers on it, and then, you know, happy days. So yeah, very stock standard Ange Highlander list. Definitely a deck to look out for in this upcoming season 2. Alright, and then jumping to Premium. Premium is where the spice is at. 8 different decks, 8 different archetypes. Obviously, you have the mutuals of Narukami and Link Joker at 2 apiece. and then 1 Pale Moon, 1 Aquaforce, 1 Dimension Police, and 1 Mega Colony. And the Mega Colony is a Flagbird colony list. Looking at the top 4, so first was White King at using DP. So I think a lot of DP mains are waiting for this, well, have been waiting for this. So DP finally taking its championship trophy, coming home with a sponsored invitation to the World Finals. That is, you love to see it. You love to see it. And even for me, I'm actually really happy that, you know, DP has won this event. Very, very cool. Second place was Blake Manor with Flagbird Colony. So incorporating the engine for Flagbird, like Ascendance Assault, and Inlet Pulse, and then obviously having the Floodgate in Gridora is pretty good in this current meta. And then third is Talton Adams with Chaos, which is really interesting. And then fourth was Michael Antonelli with Tharvas. Yeah, very, very cool. Very diverse top 4, and definitely not the stuff that we're, you know, expected to see. You know, a lot of the people, you know, on social media, a lot of the people who, you know, have been very loud or very vibrant about MFD, but we don't see any MFDs at all. Maybe MFDs for the next season, but I guess Houston is like one of those BCSs where it was very late notice, and people just haven't been able to, you know, schedule in the time to make this event. But yeah, very, very interesting to see this top 4. We do have some lists. So the first place was the DP list. You know, you have your control and taser age. You have like all your other good stuff. Playing the Enigma Calm so that you can recur PGs, which is pretty cool. Playing the Die Scooper, which is pretty interesting, you know, searching for your like Die Liner, and not playing Eternity Chaser. I think Eternity Chaser is really good. The fact that you can search a 3 just by riding on top, but I guess like maybe you don't value that much in terms of, I guess, the filter, but more so try to +1 off the Die Scooper instead, which kind of makes sense. I mean, +1 versus a filter 1. And more so a like a specific grade 3 that you want. I guess this particular player opted to run the +1 instead of you know, searching for specific grade 1s, and then run the Dijacker so that your Vanguard gets a crit. This is pretty interesting on a Unibird, because your Unibird then hits for 3 crit with a Guard Bust on Linker, but only running 2 Linker, which is very interesting. Usually decks run 4 to maximize the power of the Guard Bust. So very interesting list. Opted to run more crits, which makes sense. You want to see crits on your 5-7 checks, or whatever, how many checks you have. But yeah, otherwise everything is still the same. You know, you still run your Grand Wisdom, your Gale Sludge, very stock standard stuff. You know, your Unibirds, your new G-Guards. Yeah, very, very good deck. As I can't say really cookie cutter, but like a lot of the components there are definitely what you want to see in a DP list. So yeah, very cool. So that was first place. Second place was this Flagbird Colony. So, you know, like I said before, running the Flagbird, and then, you know, you have your Inlet Pulse, your Ascendance Assault, and then you're running the Floodgate package in Gridora, and obviously the Malak Mantis as well. Being able to reduce your opponent's Vanguard power by 10k and Persona Riding, that's equivalent to the power level of Ruination, if you think about it, right? Because you get Persona Ride, you get a +10 off the Ruination, because you call and then you play the books, right? And then you go into like Gridora and do its thing. So yeah, very interesting. I guess then the draw engine becomes Inlet Pulse instead of the draw 3 off the Ruination, which is, yeah, pretty interesting. You still run your Intrude Scissors for multi-attack, and then everything else is, you know, your stock standard stuff for Mega Colony, essentially. So your Brilliant Blisters for Disruption, and yeah, a very solid list. I think if you're building Flagbird Colony, this is the list to look, I guess, to take as a skeleton, right? Obviously, there are chip and changes that prefer for the player, so you know you can change stuff in and out of this, which is really cool. So yeah, that was Flagbird. So third was this Chaos list. So a lot of people would be like, you know, why is he running certain things like this? So the first thing that comes to mind is like a lot of players use what's called iron. Iron is the grade 0, or is it carbon? I think it's carbon. Carbon is the grade 0 that like tutors for a 1. The reason why probably this player plays this instead of the carbon, sure, it gives like +4 to like 3 units on the board, but it's a grade 1. So that means that your ride consistency is better. So I think that's pretty interesting in itself. And then running the countercharge 1, because obviously Zinc is gone. So this fulfills the CC option, I guess. You'd probably play this on the side because you have stuff like your Zirconium, which gives your Vanguard crit. So if you're putting this on the side, then your opponent has to deal with, you know, a rear guard, maybe a massive rear guard that has like countercharge. And then maybe the other side you have like the on-hit on Graving Claw or whatever it is. So yeah, your opponent has to kind of like chip and choose what to give to you, because, you know, your Vanguard's already threatening with a crit from the Zirconium. Otherwise, the deck is just as chaos as it gets. You know, running multiple locks in Photon. Yeah, Globuladia. Yeah, playing multiple locks, and then obviously, you know, you still have your bunch of different strides. Very toolboxy in terms of the strides that you can use for Link Joker, because, you know, Link Joker has just so many options to go into. And then obviously capitalizing on the new stuff is pretty good too. So yeah, very, very interesting chaos list. And I think I do agree with some of these choices. Yeah, I think the main one is playing this grade 1 over a carbon because it's a grade 1, which means ride consistency is better. And I think that's what a lot of people kind of need to remember when they're deck building. Not always is it always about the skill, but just by the consistency of your deck and making sure your deck actually functions all the way up to grade 3 so that you can actually play the game. So yeah, that's the Chaos list. And then this is the Tharvas list. Yeah, playing Fort Vessel as your alternate grade 3, because I think sometimes if you're running 4 grade 3s, it might be a bit troublesome trying to get your second one, especially if you do you know, your Lambros plays and then ride down into grade 2. Playing your Bells, obviously for the Narukami matchup. Rolox is Rolox, pretty good. Playing the Penguin, giving 5k to a rear guard, makes it 19 on restand. Pretty cool. Otherwise, you know, you still have your inclusion of Furigarius Dragon and the new G-Guard, very cool. Otherwise, I think like this deck is like pretty good, very self-explanatory. You pretty much grab your V deck and you slap on a bunch of stuff, and then you can just pretty much play premium. And yeah, that is the Tharvas list. So now there is a top 8 Eradicator list. Now this is a very interesting one. So playing Gauntlet Buster and then playing the Sweep Command engine. So playing the first Thunder Draco Kid so that you can, I guess, impede or unruly into a Sweep Command. That's pretty interesting. Much more focused on disrupting your opponent with this particular build, because I think naturally Narukami is already aggressive just by playing, you know, your Exterminates, obviously Stunverse Dragon, like one of the best strides in the game. And then now you have like defensive options in Impede, obviously, your Bulwarks, and then now Unruly, and then you're just topping it off, right, with another engine that, you know, caters for disruption, and that is the Sweep Command engine. So it's defense and offense in the same deck. So I think there's a lot you can take out from this deck. Playing different engines, different like granular engines, and then putting it, kind of shoving it all into one. And then especially if you're playing against Excel, this just becomes fat with crit, and then your opponent is essentially going to guard this. And if you hit an OT, you just magically win. Yeah, so pretty cool list, I gotta say. Very, very interesting list. And yeah, even the new Sweep Command is out, but obviously Clan Collection is not available for this particular event. So yeah, very cool list indeed. And then the other one is the top 8 Nightmare Doll list. I think this is Noman's list. Playing the 1/1 of each of the dolls. Essentially, it's a Workroid. It's a 10k Workroid with an effect that works in conjunction with each other. So sometimes you just magically get, you know, the one on the field, and then you just somehow call the other one, and then it just magically works. So yeah, very cool. Otherwise, the main point of it is the fact that it's 10k. 10k, you know, you ride into your grade 3, you do your shenanigans, you ride down to grade 2, and then you sit on 10k, and that's pretty much that. Otherwise, the inclusion of the one new stride, the 2 G guards, very interesting. Otherwise, it's just as nightmare dollars you get. I don't think going into this next meta you'll actually see this deck anymore, because the meta will just be flooded with ripples and MFD. So yeah, that is pretty much it for BCS Houston. I changed the layout of this because I think I was covering a bit of information from like half of my screen or half of my webcam. So yeah, let me know down in the comments what you guys think of the results, how you guys like the layout for this one. I think it's pretty good this time around, much better, very in-depth. I think one of the things that I tweeted about was what you guys wanted to see or what you guys wanted as content, and it's just a bit more in-depth analysis of the stuff that essentially comes out of results and why people decide to use certain ideas. So, you know, jumping back to the chaos, running the grade 1 instead of the grade 0 carbon is for, you know, ride consistency. Little things like that really change the dynamic of deck building. So yeah, hope you guys found that interesting. If you did, hit a like, subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.